Well, I think we're spiralling down that road. First of all, we saw 2,700 people put potentially in prison, some of them waiting trials, a lot of them for holding up signs saying, I oppose a genocide. So for people who are protesting against a genocide, I would say those people are actual patriots of this country who are saying, let's have a world where we make sure we're standing for human rights. It's not just Palestine Action, though, by the way. We've seen authoritarianism over the Prime Minister wanting mandatory ID cards. We've seen the authoritarianism of scrapping jury trials.
British politics like this one. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the British I Believe It, or not. Over 98% of viewers watch our content without hitting the follow button. Subscribing is completely free. The Green Party honestly makes me laugh sometimes. Yes, he is right to say Labour can be incredibly authoritarian, but let's not pretend the so-called liberal left is any different. The argument many critics make is that the Green Party could be even more restrictive than Labour on certain issues. Take Zach Polanski, for example. Opponents claim he supports free speech when it aligns with his views, but backs tougher legal consequences when it does not. He has made comments on television about stronger regulation around speech that he believes causes harm, and that has sparked serious debate. Supporters would say that is about accountability and protecting communities. Critics say it risks limiting open debate. That is the heart of the disagreement. Where do you draw the line between protecting people and protecting free expression?
I've had friends arrested in the last couple of weeks for holding cardboard signs saying, I support Palestine Action. And I think it's this increasingly authoritarian moves from the government to ultimately crack down on embarrassing speech for them or things that they don't like. So I think there's two separate issues here.
Yeah, they are separate because obviously Palestine Action has been prescribed as a terror organisation.
But that's then the choice of priorities by this government to prescribe that organisation and then to tell the police this is a good thing to be doing.
I think the first thing to say in this discussion is solidarity with Graham Linehan for being arrested for making jokes on social media. Also solidarity with the many gender-critical women who have been harassed by the police in recent years, often at the behest of trans activists who take discomfort at the fact that they've been sticking up for women's sex-based rights. We need to put this in perspective here. We've got armed police arresting comedy writers at airports for telling jokes. And if this was an isolated incident, maybe that would be one thing. But at the moment, in England and Wales, more than 30 people are arrested every single day for things they post on the internet. I think the problem in this discussion, and we've seen it demonstrated here, Zach, I dare say, is that there's a lot of me speech rather than free speech. So we throw Graham Linehan under the bus whilst talking about Palestine Action. I agree, people shouldn't be arrested for holding up placards saying I support Palestine Action, but I also think
lots of people
that
say they
shouldn't be arrested either.
That they are very different things here.
I mean, they are very different.
The law has changed. The law has changed, and the government has made Palestine Action a prescribed terror organisation, haven't they? So you can't really compare those two things.
I think the law is wrong in various different areas. I just wish that people like Zach would show a little bit more consistency. If it's speech you agree with, then you are happy to...
One is about speaking out against the ongoing genocide, and one is showing solidarity with people
you agree with,
inciting why you don't.
He presents it, critics argue, as free speech for those on his side because they believe their cause is morally right. The accusation from opponents is that he would support criminalising certain right-wing views where possible because he sees them as harmful or extreme. In his view, those ideas cross a line and should not be given a platform. At the same time, critics claim he appears more cautious when addressing controversial beliefs held within minority communities, including some conservative Islamic viewpoints. Supporters would argue that protecting minority rights is essential in a democracy. Critics counter that standards should apply equally to everyone, regardless of background. That tension sits at the heart of the debate. This is why some people on the right argue that examples like Palestine Action are frequently raised as free speech cases, while they believe restrictions and enforcement tend to affect right-leaning voices more heavily. Whether that perception matches broader data is debated, but it is a view that clearly resonates with a section of voters. The broader claim being made here is that authoritarian instincts are not limited to one ideology, but critics insist they see them more strongly within parts of the modern left. They also argue that in certain religious or political systems around the world, limits on speech can carry extremely serious consequences, which is why they believe these discussions matter so much. Take the case of Graham Linehan, who was arrested shortly after landing over social media posts that authorities considered serious. Some supporters say the arrest showed that laws around online speech are enforced strictly. Critics argue it was an overreaction, especially given that airports are high-security environments where armed officers are routinely present. They question whether resources are always being used in the right way. The wider point critics make is that the Green Party is in no position to accuse others of authoritarian tendencies if they support strong speech regulations themselves. They also challenge the idea that politicians who advocate global cooperation over national borders can at the same time present themselves as strong defenders of traditional national identity. Figures like Zach Polanski and Zara Sultana are often described by opponents as champions of democracy and free speech. Their critics disagree strongly with that characterization and say their record suggests something different. This is clearly a highly charged debate. It revolves around a central question: where should the limits of free expression sit, and who gets to decide?
Released today, you talk about a big brother Britain. I'm assuming that you're talking about George Orwell's oppressive state rather than the telly programme. Isn't this going over the top a bit? I mean, this is not a country where people get thrown in jail for things, as they say, at least not very often.
Well, I think we're spiralling down that road. First of all, we saw 2,700 people put potentially in prison, some of them waiting trials, a lot of them for holding up signs saying, "I oppose a genocide." We have seen a genocide happen in Israel now for the last couple of years.
No, that's not the signs that they're being arrested for. It is signs which say things like "from the river to the sea," signs which imply elimination of the state of Israel, which are at some sense anti-Semitic and intimidating.
Well, as a Jewish person, I don't find that anti-Semitic, and in fact, Benjamin Netanyahu himself has used that phrase. I'm one of only 5 people in British history who have been Jewish and lead a political party, so anti-Semitism needs to be taken really seriously in the same way that Islamophobia or any form of racism or hate crime needs to be taken seriously. But criticism of the Israeli government, I would say, is a moral responsibility when we're seeing what they are doing to innocent people day in, day out. And our government is not just complicit in that, they are actively enabling it. So for people who are protesting against a genocide, I would say those people are actual patriots of this country who are saying, let's have a world where we make sure we're standing for human rights. It's not just Palestine Action, though, by the way. We've seen authoritarianism over the Prime Minister wanting mandatory ID cards. We've seen the authoritarianism of scrapping jury trials. Pattern over pattern shows that Keir Starmer is deeply desperate caretaker Prime Minister who is clinging on to power by trying to crush dissent.
So you know all those 2,700 are innocent of any potential crime?
That's not true at all. So some of them have committed criminal damage. But as you said earlier on the show, criminal damage is already illegal. That's very different from it being a terrorist attack. And it's the conflation which is dangerous and the authoritarianism which was behind the question you asked me.
This week you celebrated a High Court decision to block the prescription of Palestine Action. You're OK with criminal damage as long as it's done in the pursuit of a cause that you're sympathetic with?
Well, I think the government have been completely shamed in court, and I'm proud that the entire Green MP group all voted against prescription of Palestine Action. Where criminal damage is committed, then of course people should face charges for that. I don't believe any protester can...
British politics like this one. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the British I Believe It, or not over 98% of viewers watch our content without hitting the follow button. Subscribing is completely free.
Commits criminal damage and doesn't think they'll be arrested. That again is very different from terrorist activity.
And I'm asking you about this, is that you're talking about Britain as somehow near to being a police state, an oppressive state, in a world where, you know, we heard this morning Alex Navalny is thrown into prison, he's poisoned by the Kremlin, we think, where elections are rigged in Africa and Latin America, where people in China can't worship freely. Middle East, a journalist gets chopped into pieces in an embassy. And then you paint this country as somehow oppressive. I mean, honestly, isn't that just completely wild?
No, I think what's wild is to see the road we're going onto, and as the leader of a political party not to call it out. We say that Donald Trump...
We're not at that point in... You may say that's the direction we're going into, but you're putting this country in the same bracket as those others I've just been talking about.
Well, you've just listed a whole list of human rights abuses which are atrocious, including the horrific human rights abuses going on in Putin's Russia. I think it's right to condemn all of those things. I think it's also important, we heard the phrase earlier from Priti Patel, axis of authoritarianism. I think that was actually a good phrase, but you have to include the United States in that. We have ICE, who are essentially a paramilitary organisation on the streets, killing people in cold blood.
We haven't got ICE in this country.
Well, we have the UK, though, saying that Donald Trump is a reliable ally and we have a special relationship.
People say what they like. The point is we do not have people on the street whipping kids off the street into vans and shooting them. We just don't have it.
Well, we do have migration raids, and we just heard Reform being interviewed, and we know they're going down that road too. The problem here is Labour, at every single opportunity, whenever Nigel Farage says jump, they say how high. You will never appease the right by doing that. They will just get more and more extreme. And in Reform, we see an extreme political party. You just had Zia Youssef on, who people will be disgusted to hear his comments on poverty. People up and down this country who can't pay the bills, whose bills are rising up, who can't feed the kids. To hear a politician, who we should say is a millionaire, sit in this chair and say there's only small pockets of poverty in this country. I wonder how people in Gorton and Denton will hear that.